I'm sitting down ready to write. Actually, I've written this blog article about our recent trip to China. I have many photographs, and for those who haven't been to China, I want to put those pictures into context by providing a series of maps with thumbnail pictures of visited locations documenting our journey. To view what I'm talking about, check out the link in the bottom of this podcast, or go to xmetrics.com.au and have a look at the maps there. If you're not interested in my musings about childhood influences on creating a desire to travel and just want to create a clickable map, well, there's also a link about where you can go and create your own clickable map. However, if you are interested, keep listening. While I was thinking about the map solution, I reflected on my primary school years, where one of the most enjoyable homework tasks I looked forward to completing was creating maps of countries and locations far away from Australia. I would spend hours recreating maps of locations and linking settings of stories, both fact and fiction, to those maps. That created in me a hunger to travel, which has stayed with me until this day. My parents were not travellers, so the inspiration to travel can in part be attributed to where my imagination took me while reading books, followed by attaching the content of those stories to a geospatial location on a map, and finally embarking upon adventures to discover or create my own stories in new locations. What 4 words could describe that path to wanderlust, which according to the Oxford Dictionary means a strong desire to travel? In the context of this article, I've settled on fables, maps, curiosity, and adventure. Tucked in there, somewhere between curiosity and adventure, is an unspoken but critical word: action. That is the difference between the person who is the vicarious traveller and the actual travelling adventurer. The picture that I used in the feature image for this post and blog article is one of my favourite images. It's a place where imagination transports the 2 young travellers in the picture to a place filled with treasure and challenges. Over time, the adventures are not make-believe played out in a bedroom or backyard, but in real life, initially maybe during a gap year or as a young university student on break, or creating an overseas chapter as Joe, our son, did by living and studying in Taiwan for a year. Our family travels a lot for pleasure, not work. I love to use the travel to hone my multimedia creation skills in a foreign environment, free of the comforts of home Wi-Fi and sleeping in the same bed and home, rather than the expected 130 or more beds and sleeping places we expect to encounter on our journey next year. Not to mention the transport choices we will have to make between destinations in the 40 countries we will visit, or the multitude of eSIMs and seeking out Wi-Fi that might permit uploading of our videos and photographs when we try to share our adventures, currency exchange visas, Schengen areas, ESTAs, conflict zones, and more add a little more uncertainty and planning to the mix. So how do I relate travels to educating kids and teachers? While what I've just said is different to a teacher wrangling technology during a 40-minute lesson with 30 students day in, day out, it is and has a higher level of difficulty and risk compared to sitting in the same office day in and day out, wondering what the next piece of cyber mummification will occur to further reduce teacher and student productivity, rather than implementing various work and study zones with acknowledged rules and risks. A topic for another day, and for anyone who might take umbrage, I am a firm believer in our formal code of conduct and duty of care to students and staff, which extends into this space, cybersecurity. Like the Berlin Wall and the Mexico-USA Wall, it is a costly thing to build and maintain at the expense of working on the root cause. Ingraining in students how to put on a seatbelt and perform first aid is better than dropping all traffic speeds to, say, 15 kilometres per hour, especially when we have people riding e-scooters with lights off at night to save the battery on footpaths because it is safer for the rider at 40 kilometres an hour without any action to protect pedestrians. To make it real and not use analogies, because of quote-unquote time pressures, Most teachers do not ingrain user account sign-in practices in grade 1 and 2 as specified in the Australian National Curriculum, opting to use a common password for all students in a class, establishing bad habits rather than, quote-unquote, forcing students to achieve another, quote-unquote, login license. So even though this article is about travel, maps, stories, and imagination, I still relate the things I learn and practice to ways that students can have the most productive experience on their learning journey. And that sometimes involves not taking the easiest option. I shall now dismount my soapbox and continue with things arguably more fun, although my next heading sounds a little daunting. It's not, just wait until we get to taxonomy. All right, let's get a little bit edu-technical. I want to share my adventures. So what do I share? I need to share a little about ourselves as travellers, people, so that you as a listener can decide this is the person who could be from my tribe sharing stories. Or if our backgrounds and styles don't resonate, you move on. I will share the about us through a page rather than a post, as we are who we are. And at our age, it probably isn't going to change too much going forward. Again, the link to About Us is down in the bottom of this podcast. The things we encounter will, on the other hand, be new, fresh, and hopefully blog-worthy. If, as an actual traveller, I want to share general topics of interest I encounter or research related to the destinations I visit, what categories would they include? In the past, I've looked for categories from YouTube and even asked Copilot. However, in the end, I found their offerings inadequate for my needs. This category list is mine and serves as a checklist to ensure that I have some headings to research on my destinations, so I come away with more than visual imprints, but knowledge about the past, present, and future of the location. So here are 6 items. Food. Flatbread styles. Now, there's a whole reason behind that, which I'll go into at a later time. But generally local dishes that are spicy, sweet, healthy, and maybe odd. Personal quests. So I have my personal quest, which might be learning about ultralight aircraft in a particular destination, because that's a hobby of mine. Or a place that has an interesting backstory for me, which might be related to mythology or history or something I've read somewhere. 3, the culture, history, geography, scenery, and interactions in the locations we visit. That's a general statement which really everyone should be a little bit aware of if they are a traveller. 4 is a bit more personal, challenges, emotions, and personal reflections of not just the places, but the actual journey itself. 5, technical tips about capturing, recording, reporting, using multimedia assets and techniques and so forth, and hopefully sharing those in a way that you might be able to take some tips and use them either in the classroom or on your own journeys. And finally, traveller and administrative tips that help us enjoy the experience more, and if shared with you, might make your life a little bit easier. So I get quite nerdy in the sections below, but let's start with a bit of humanism, which is about linking my passion for travel and maps with my childhood. Now, the article below is generated from some dot points I entered into my AI blog generator. So I've used AI, even though I've thought about this myself. I've read through the content and I can't disagree with the way it has been written. Most importantly, I think the article ends well by highlighting the value of having the curiosity to embark upon journeys of wanderlust. When sharing pictures of a location in a story where I can't assume that people have visited the location or even know where it is, including a map along with an itinerary path helps set context for the person reading the article. It amazes me how a small child can go from understanding location and distance in a backyard or schoolyard before moving on to streets, suburbs, cities, countries, and continents, extrapolating the idea of place and distance from a backyard context to a global one. I feel sometimes that it is taught or learned intuitively rather than with intention. Maybe that's why some people are destined to be travellers and others not. Maps play such an important role in assisting the understanding of these concepts, or at least they have in my life. Okay, enough from me. This next piece is a joint guided article created by AI from my outline prompts and reviewed and edited before including here. That's no excuse to switch off. So maps and stories influence wanderlust in young students. Childhood is a time of wonder and imagination where the seeds of curiosity are sown through the stories we hear and read. These stories often serve as a child's first window to the world beyond their immediate surroundings, igniting a sense of adventure and discovery. Here we explore the profound connection between the tales we encounter in our early years and our understanding of geography, spatial awareness, and maps. We also delve into how those elements can nurture a lifelong passion for travel and learning about diverse cultures around the globe. Stories can act as a gateway to geography. From fairy tales set in enchanted forests to epic adventures across vast kingdoms, stories have a unique way of transporting young minds to distant places. These narratives not only entertain but also introduce children to different landscapes, climates, and environments. As they follow the journey of characters, children begin to form mental maps of these fictional worlds, developing an early understanding of distance, spatial relationships, and geographic features. Developing spatial awareness through storytelling. Spatial awareness is an essential cognitive skill that helps children understand the relationships between objects in their environment. When children listen to or read stories that involve movement and exploration, they start to grasp concepts of direction, distance, and location. For instance, a story about a hero's journey from a village to a castle can help a child visualize and comprehend the spatial dynamics involved in such a journey, laying the groundwork for more complex geographic thinking. The role of maps in storytelling. Many beloved children's books come with illustrated maps that chart the protagonist's adventures. These maps serve as a visual aid, helping children to follow the narrative while enhancing their geographical literacy. By engaging with these maps, children learn to interpret symbols, scales, and directions, skills that are fundamental to understanding real-world geography. The map of Winnie the Pooh's 100-Acre Wood or the Marauder's map in the Harry Potter series are perfect examples of how fictional maps can captivate young minds and foster a love for cartography. Mischief managed. Cultivating a passion for travel. As children grow, the stories that once fuel their imagination often translate into a desire to explore the real world. The places they read about become destinations on their travel bucket list, and the cultures they encounter in stories spark a curiosity to learn more. This passion for travel and discovery can lead to a deeper appreciation for the diversity of our world, encouraging a lifelong quest for knowledge and understanding. Learning about cultures through stories. Storybooks are also a gateway to understanding different cultures and traditions. Through tales set in various parts of the world, children gain insights into the lifestyles, customs, and values of people from diverse backgrounds. This cultural awareness fosters empathy and open-mindedness, qualities that are essential for global citizenship. Conclusion. The stories we encounter in our childhood are more than just entertainment. They are powerful tools for learning and growth. By sparking an early interest in geography, spatial awareness, and maps, these narratives lay the foundation for a lifelong passion for travel and cultural exploration. As we nurture our children's love for reading, we are also opening their minds to the wonders of the world, inspiring them to become curious, compassionate, and adventurous individuals. Okay, back to my original task, building clickable maps. So that's the end of the article, written by the machine with some input from myself, quite a lot actually. Because this is all words, it makes sense to actually provide a concrete example of what I initially set out to do, which was to create a clickable map linking to albums that the viewer could choose to view or not. Just like a documentary, it is probably useful to provide an introduction to the location, any adventures that may have occurred or feelings about the place, and then let the pictures and videos tell the rest of the story. From a technical standpoint, it's worthwhile mentioning that when you travel to different locations, sometimes you don't remember where you actually were in terms of a map location. That's where your phone comes in handy, because in most cases, when you take a photograph, the GPS location is attached to the photograph. What we noticed in China, though, is that the photographs and even the underlying map in Google Maps was offset against this satellite imagery by quite a few hundred meters. This also extended through to the location stored in the Apple iPhone of locations of photographs against the underlying maps. I haven't tried to do a comparison with Bing Maps, but 2 out of the 3 big mapping solutions in China provided an inaccurate offset, which you need to compensate for. So these maps over on the blog about the China trip divide our 10-day journey into epics that are logical trip chunks, chapters, or sections. Each epic has a series of locations and events that, as I have mentioned above, are in fact stories. It is the locations and events that translate into albums that are the final destination people click on in the map. The map image below is what our trip beginning in March 2025 will involve. I'm setting the context by providing timeframes on the map, a direction of travel, and chunks or epics that I can guide you, the reader, along with me. It helps me to serve as an index even before I start the journey, a kind of library system for the items I will be collecting. Important note though, the picture that's included in the blog article, not on the podcast, is just a picture. I haven't added any clickable elements to it yet. Further down in the actual blog and in this discussion, there is a clickable map that you can experience firsthand the usefulness of this approach of creating clickable thumbnails that lead to albums. So the map that I have in the blog at learnshifting.com shows the epics or segmented chapters of this 9.5-month journey. Why didn't I use the word chapters? I like the term epic, and I'm sure each adventure will be an epic. This trip is made up of 8 epics. When the map is live, clicking into an epic will show either thumbnails or the next level of detail. For example, in our first 6 days of travel, we will be in Melbourne, Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Seoul, and Busan before heading across to Japan. The first map sets the context of the trip, showing thumbnail links to all the epics in that trip that take you into further maps which contain the stories attached to each of those epics. The story thumbnails, numbered, takes you to either more maps, websites, albums, videos, or whatever the multimedia element is for that story. It is this detailed part of providing context, structure, consistency, and containers for the content we want to share that is that part that will be refined as the journey unfolds. A video description or podcast-style voiceover can provide some reflection regarding the locations and events at a higher level for the epics. Nothing with this is set in concrete, and like the normal practice of teaching, the craft will be refined with experience. So how I organise the documentation of a journey. By documentation, I'm talking about photos, videos, blog articles, etc. Not my air tickets, visas, etc. For that, I use OneNote, and I will cover that as well. This next part's a little detailed, nerdy, and only interesting to those who are wanting to do a similar thing with their journey or photos. Skip ahead if you start falling asleep. Taxonomy or cataloguing and sorting. How do I group together words, pictures, and videos from 40 countries while still enjoying the travel experience? If documenting the trip is a chore, it won't happen. Without that word, prepare, it may be too difficult to execute, regardless of the level of commitment, dedication, or resilience. To ensure I capture content over the upcoming 9-month adventure to 40 countries, I need to divide the journey into sections, like a book, epics. This will be handy when aligning content with dates. The 2 index items I always use are dates and location. The phone captures both date and location when I take a photograph, so I know how that detail already captured. I have a plan of the countries that I'm going to visit and many of the cities that we are visiting. So just a note on dates and folder names. If you store images in folders, I think we all do that, group it by year, and then you actually have an actual date of the photograph folders following the year, YYY, month, DD, day format, e.g. 2025-01-26, rather than other combinations like day, month, year. Don't be tempted to name your folders, for example, Barcelona 2025-01-26. If you must, reverse it so it's 2025-1-26-Barcelona. So that when you sort your folders will sort nicely by capture date in either date ascending or date descending. So I've decided to use the terms from a computing methodology called Agile, which bases its terms on storytelling. Essentially, I'm coming full circle by using these terms to describe our next journey, and I'm experimenting here by applying the same convention to our recent China trip of only 10 days. So the terms are epics and stories. There's no direct link between continents, countries, and epics. I simply looked at the overall journey and broken it into 8 epics that offer rough geographical groupings. These epics will contain their own stories that contain the ingredients of location, dates, and events, but don't need to be defined by any of them. So I can group several cities or locations into one story or refer back to events and locations from other stories. Epics, though, provide a closure to that time period and location. Although this sounds like I'm overthinking how I'm going to document our travels, having a structure means that I can codify items and attach them to file names and links, even if I haven't created the content yet. It allows me to create a filing system made up of letters and numbers to describe an epic, a story within that epic, and then a sequence number and also a media type. In Smoothies, which is a show that I run about education technology, I have a numbering system consisting of the last 2 numbers of the year, the month represented as an alphabetical code, and as there are only 12 months in a year, so A to L, and finally the episode number for that month, which is a number between 1 and 5, given that there are a maximum of 5 Fridays in a month. I only present once every Friday. This gives me a 4-character code which provides uniqueness and a very quick way to identify when an episode was recorded. Having a similar system for collecting assets regarded to and related to travel means that I don't even have to think about the naming convention for files because I can just apply one based upon epic number, story number, what type of asset it is, and create that code even before I've created the asset. So there are 5 items here. Number 1 is the epic, 1 to 8, but I'm using letters. So A, B, C, D to map 1 to 8. And I'm only using a single character because I think any more than 10 epics is probably too much. 8 epics is what we have for our 284-day, 40-country journey. A story, 01 to 99. I use numbers, and in our 284-day journey of 8 epics, I don't think I'll be writing 99 stories for even the longest epic. But I do use the full 2 characters, though, starting with 01 and not just 1, just to make sure that if I sort, it will sort appropriately. Number 3 is the asset type, which is an audio, video, image, website URL, or document. These letters help me create anchor codes to link my thumbnails to from the thumbnail enhanced map. So AVIWD works for me, and it's just a helper if I'm looking for that asset. I normally store videos in a certain location because of their size, and images live in Lightroom, which has a different folder structure. 4 is the author. The story in a blog, vlog, or podcast format is attributed to an author, so I don't need a code for that because when someone actually publishes as an author, it'll either be Helen or myself. Date. It's important, but I don't need to worry about that because the date is captured and it's related to the story. The photos and videos have the date created stamped into their metadata. So let's use the following image. And again, if you're listening on the podcast, you'll have to go to learnshifting.com to see the example in this blog post, where the image has been enabled with links using SVG, which stands for Scalable Vector Graphics Coding Construct. So if you hover over a thumbnail in the picture, you'll see a website address with a hashtag at the end of the URL and a code. That hashtag is what's known as a HTML anchor and allows you to create a destination placeholder in any allocation or any location in a web page. So my coding system can also be used to create destination anchors in a web page that my thumbnails can link to. In reality, the image thumbnails link to Adobe Portfolio web pages that are in fact albums I have created from my Lightroom photographs that have been transformed into albums. More on that later. Actually, not in this post, it'll be in another podcast. I've taken the code segment directly from the Exometric site and pasted it here as custom HTML into this WordPress page, and it just works. For the purpose of keeping you on this web page, what I've done is I've popped the sites up in a new window, but that's the only change I've made to the content that I pasted into the web page on learnshifting.com. I know this sounds all very convoluted, but with this structure in place, it allows me to take my cameras, which in my case are an iPhone plus 2 GoPro cameras, capture images and video for a day, upload that either to my laptop and or Lightroom in the cloud, where I can then select the best photographs for the day while not throwing away any of the other photographs and provide a subset of the day's adventures. If I then want to write a diary of the day's events, which may then be transformed into a blog, I can do that knowing that I have structured access to the multimedia assets from the day's adventures. For those of you who follow on our adventures, you will be able to dissect the stories and links that I share to see how I have applied this methodology to creating my blog of this incredible journey that we are about to embark upon. The following headings will be discussed in detail in later blog posts and podcasts, but here I wanted to include a basic link to the software, hardware, software subscriptions, and web app favorites, as I deliver weekly EdTech episodes to teachers in a show called Smoothies, which stands for Short Multimodal Online Opportunities to Help Interested Educators Succeed. Many topics cover the very items I list below, and by using them in real life while on the road, I accumulate a series of best practice learnings to share with everybody, not just teachers, on how to use these communication tools. So very quickly, software, I use Snagit, Adobe Express, Lightroom, and Portfolio, Premiere Pro, Firefly, WordPress, OneNote, Word, Excel, annotation software. On the hardware front, I'm using the iPhone, a Windows 11 laptop, which is a Dell XPS 13. I have the 2 GoPro cameras and a couple of external hard drives. I have subscriptions to Adobe of an additional 1 terabyte and also the Creative Cloud. I have an iCloud 2 terabyte cloud storage. I have a Microsoft 365 family subscription and a YouTube account, along with a few other accounts as well. And web favorites, I'll cover more of these, but Rome to Rio helps me get around and find quick ways to get from point A to point B. Booking.com helps me find a place to sleep. There are many more, whether it's GoToGate, Trip.com, and we'll be covering those through the blog post. I'm going to finish up here. Very long chat, and I'll need to edit this before posting it. If you've listened all the way through to the end, thank you very much.